everyone. I'm Lori Bloom, co-founder of Gracefully Graying. Welcome to Gracefully Graying Live. We are connecting you to information and resources in Michigan and beyond to help you create and maintain a productive and vibrant life as we are all gracefully graying. And as always, a thanks to our sponsors. Enjoy the live stream.
Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, attorney, and co-founder, Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Graying, I am very pleased to welcome as our guest, Dr. Carrie Leach, who is a research assistant professor at the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University in Detroit, as she leads us in a discussion regarding issues concerning computer technology and connectivity for those of us who are aging. Carrie, welcome.
Thanks so much, Henry. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your background and who you are?
Sure. So I have been at the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University since 2008. I started there while I was completing my Master's of Public Administration with the goal of, I think I want to work in aging services when I grow up and really immerse myself in matters of public policy. And then started a research project at the Institute of Gerontology and spent about 10 years working on needs assessments and understanding the circumstances surrounding older adults in a variety of communities in Michigan. And got so kind of agitated by what I was hearing while I was transcribing interviews that the questions that kind of came up for me were burning enough for me to apply to a Ph.D. program, which I completed at Wayne State University also. And my Ph.D. is in health communication. I understood while I was listening to the voices of older people that we surveyed, interviewed, conducted focus groups with, that the needs that I heard or resonated the most with me were the gaps in being able to connect with people. And so it was a communication gap, disconnect issue for me. And so decided to pursue my PhD in communication to get at those issues. So studied older adults' connections or disconnections and why they become hard to reach, especially in later life. So my research focuses on the circumstances of people ages 75 and older. And so, yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Carrie. First of all, can you tell us about your roles with Checkup and with Cures?
Sure. So in addition to working at the Institute of Gerontology, a lot of the work that I've done has been around involving and partnering with people to conduct research in their communities. I don't think that I can solve problems, but I know that when you work with people, they have their own solutions, and my job is to help bring those things to bear through research. And so in doing that, an environmental health center started at Wayne State University in about 2014. And because of my background and skills in community engagement, I started working at an environmental health center, and that is CURES, it's an acronym for the Center for Urban Responses to Environmental Stressors. And so in my work at CURES, that really focuses on engaging members of the Detroit community where Wayne State University is situated, and engaging them in the work of getting information out and science out, environmental health information, resources, and information in the hands of people so they can make decisions. And that means people in their everyday lives, whether or not you're smelling paint fumes and you're not correlating that you just had your house painted and you have a splitting headache and maybe you need to open a window, and at the policy level or a decision influencer level. So we really want to connect science to decision making at many levels. And so that's what I do. And in that work, and the last 8 or 9 years I've spent working in environmental health literacy and connecting with Detroit residents, I was recently joined a team at another center that is new and budding at Wayne State University, and that is CHECkup. It's another long acronym, and it's the Center for Health Equity and Community Knowledge in Urban Populations. And so that center, the mission also is similar in that, and it works for me because as a co-leader our environmental health center doing that community engagement, CHECkup also wants to engage people in the process of conducting research that is not only done in partnership with Detroit residents and African Americans in Detroit, but also it's a very deeply connected center that works towards health equity versus my role at Cures, which is environmental health. And at CHECkup, we really want people to identify their own research questions and issues and the research agenda. And it's driven that work by the needs identified by the steering committees, residents, all the people that we engage in that work. So a lot of community engagement, and I do research that is very partnered and led and driven by people that are most affected by challenges, health inequities that they face.
Carrie, tell us about some of the problems regarding technology and computers for those of us who are aging in the Detroit metropolitan area.
Sure. So it was around 2020, I want to say February, March, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And doing our work at Cures, we had really understood our audience in that we meet people where they are throughout the city of Detroit. And don't assume if we have an event that people have a free day to come and join us. Some people face issues with getting transportation, childcare, right? And so the approach we use to getting environmental health in the hands of people is kind of meet them where they are, right? And so we use a mobile approach where we'll bring researchers and videos and talks to small groups using snowball methods of people referring friends, gathering small groups, and it kind of works in that way. And what happened in when the pandemic started is we were no longer able to connect with the 500 to 600 people that we were used to interfacing with in all of these sites throughout the city. And everything kind of just came to a screeching halt. And we didn't know what do we do? We know from evaluations in the past, when we asked people questions like, do you have a computer in the home or email? About 40% of the people that we reached said that they didn't. And that was why we took the mobile approach, and we call people on the phone to set up face-to-face meetings. But it became very clear that we needed to connect virtually, and interfacing with people just was not an option. And so we had this radio silence. It was very new for us. And we had the task of presenting at a law symposium that year. And what we decided to do was take a dive into this disconnect that we were experiencing without knowing a lot about it. But in that research and in that presentation at the University of Detroit Mercy Law Symposium, I presented with my colleague, Professor Nicholas Schrock. And we did kind of a policy analysis and state of the issues facing older or Detroit residents in general, but my focus being particularly on what does it mean for older people, since I the lens with which I want to see the world is how do things affect people in later life. And so what we learned during that research for that symposium was that Detroit has the lowest internet connectivity rate in the nation. And so we didn't realize that was the state of things before the pandemic, but that there's a real social injustice issue here. Older adults, when I think about connecting with people, these are the people that have, especially in the city of Detroit, they bear the burden of a lot of chronic health conditions. and they need that more information and resources, and you can't connect with those things without being able to connect to the internet. We take for granted that we all can Google things and access information easily, and that's just not the case for people who live in a city that is disconnected. And I would just say, I don't know that Detroit is still the number one most disconnected in the nation. I think it may have moved to number 2, but a problem that is still really, really, it's a disservice to the health and well-being of Detroit residents. And so we spent some time grappling with that, and then going on to publish those results and make recommendations to advocate for improvements in Detroit.
It's quite a serious disconnect and problem. A big growing area is telemedicine. What is the impact of telemedicine in this area?
Well, so good question. And I don't know that we know everything that we need to know about that, but that's kind of next steps for me and where I'd really like to head with this. We know that if people have health challenges, there are platforms that you can use. And I know during the pandemic, some people had the advantage of being able to connect with their doctor and receive the care and connect with medical professionals, and not the case in the city of Detroit, right? Because we have people, not only do we have this digital disconnect, it's a digital divide. I like to think of it as digital exclusion or digital justice issue. And we know that people that have test results can pull them up easily when they have an app that their medical or provider might offer, whatever network that they belong to. But that information is not accessible to everybody. And that really does, it's a disservice to people that have the most chronic conditions and also live in environments that have are imposing more challenges on their health. And then you add this layer of not being able to access all of the resources that other people can. It really puts Detroit older adults, which I'm really concerned about, at a great disadvantage. And those telehealth resources really can help inform people's decision making, right? Whether that's test results, or you don't want to go to the doctor, but you don't want to call to figure out when your appointment is. There's a lot of technology that people are missing out on that can help them get them more involved and more actively engaged with their medical care. And it's really something that needs to happen in Detroit, and that I'm hoping that we can delve into. I work in checkup right now. It's one of the areas that we're really focused on in our work. We held a community engaged research symposium at the end of last year and did some agenda setting around issues that were of concern to everyone at that summit symposium. And that was made up of researchers, clinicians, faculty members, but also community stakeholders and people that work outside of Wayne State that we partner with. And one of the agenda setting items that we focused on, or they focused on, we didn't. I'm glad to hear it, because it launched me forward in this, because the fact that it was grounded in community and those shared concerns. But really, the particular group we were focusing on for that summit was on Black health and racial equity. And so now we've been doing some work to be able to do some more grant writing around these issues. And I started last year or the year before actually seeking grant funding, which I was recently awarded an award to help shape where the research should go to delve into this issue of digital justice, the divide, whatever you want to call it, however you want to frame it. And so I'm really excited I get to partner with some of the people I have long-standing relationships with that are community and aging advocates, and delve into this topic more deeply. So it's exciting.
the need for technology and the aging population is critical, and it sounds like you're doing a lot. Why don't you tell us about the article that you had published in the Seattle Journal of Technology, Environmental and Innovation Law?
Sure. So that is written by myself as the expert, the gerontologist in that situation, and my colleague that I mentioned earlier, Professor Nicholas Schrock, and he's at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, and has a lot of different titles. So it came out of that law symposium that we presented on, and so I kind of offered the state of affairs for what it looks like to be an older adult in Detroit during the pandemic, right? And so that article really is open. First of all, I would just say it's open and available for anyone to download. It's not like a traditional academic journal article that's behind a paywall and that you can't access, that's available to everybody. So my role in that was to really give a state of affairs for older adults who live in Detroit and the exacerbating role that technology plays in their health. And so not only did we go through kind of an overview from the broad state level technology use, because we'll see that there are differences among older adults across the state of Michigan. And I had some data that I was able to share in that article from a needs assessment of older adults in the state of Michigan, and then looked at computer use and talked about those rates in Detroit, and just kind of contrasting what it means to be an older person that is living in the state of Michigan, not in an urban, connected city like Detroit, and the role that not having technology can play, specifically in the time of COVID. And I had learned a lot during the pandemic. We were trumpeting these issues, and I'll get back to Nick's role in that article. We were trumpeting these issues about the disconnect, and what we heard back was there was an organization that gave us computers to distribute to older adults. But what we really quickly learned was that we didn't solve problems by providing computers. And we did distribute 1,700 computers to older adults throughout the city of Detroit in 2020 and 2021, in a very brief snapshot of time. But what we heard from people was, I don't know how to use this computer. I opened it, but it didn't have a keyboard. And so I didn't take it out of the box, because we had distributed about half were tablets and half were computers that we received. And so there really was this disconnect between people feeling like they have technology in their hands, but also, I don't have Wi-Fi. Are there sites where I can use this thing? And so we learned a lot about what it means, at least for those individuals who had that technology. And so, so back to the article in the Seattle Journal that you mentioned. Nick really is the expert in the policy piece that really does give advice for how to solve these problems. We know that there are some programs, and I actually heard them from one of your other programs that I was listening to, one of your recordings. There are some low income options for getting broadband internet service. And those may be as low as $9.99, under $10 a month. But that really can be not something that everybody can do. And it seems like a nominal fee to some people, but it isn't to everybody. Besides that, the Law Journal article also would just make observations like, we don't necessarily have the infrastructure in the city of Detroit to connect people in their homes to the internet. And so we give an overview in that article of the policy implications, what needs to be done, and how decision makers can help bridge the gap between older people in the city of Detroit that really are at a disadvantage and really deserve their city to do better for them.
Carrie, this is such an important topic. We're running out of time, but before we sign off, are there any final thoughts that you want to share with us?
I don't know. I appreciate the rich array of information you have on this website, because as somebody that studies communication and appreciates that as we get older, we have fewer paths for connecting for information because we retire, right? So we're out of the workforce, so we don't have as many people to draw from there. If you discontinue volunteering or a civic engagement role, there's all, or we no longer have children in schools, and so that's not a channel for information. So I would just say channels like this are needed. People need information and in an accessible way, and so yeah, I just appreciate whenever I see anybody that's filling that gap, and that's just what you're doing here with Gracefully Graying. So I'm a fan, and bravo to you for doing the work of helping address that.
Well, Dr. Carrie Leach, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Graying and your kind words about what we're doing. I want to thank our viewers for watching. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors for helping make Gracefully Graying possible. Again, thank you again. And Carrie, we really appreciate what you're doing. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks so much, Henry. And thanks to everybody that we're not looking at on the screen that helped get me here and all the logistics today. I really appreciate it.
We're a team.
Well done.